I'm reading to help myself be a better speaker and be more confident in myself, and to be a better person overall. I put a timer for 30 minutes. I don't think you can see that. But yeah, let's start. I kind of left off. I had my bookmark here. What is self-sabotage? Self-sabotage is when you have two conflicting desires. One is conscious, one is unconscious. You know how you want to move your life forward, and yet you are still, for some reason, stuck. When you have big, ongoing, insurmountable issues in your life, especially when the solutions seem so simple, so easy, and yet so impossible to stick with, what you have are not big problems, but big attachments. People are pretty incredible, in fact, in the fact that they basically do whatever they want you to do. This is true of everything in human life. Regardless of the potential consequences, human nature has revealed itself to be incredibly self-serving. People have an almost superhuman way of doing whatever they feel compelled to do, regardless of whom it could hurt, what wars it could spawn, or what futures would be put at risk. When you consider this, you begin to realize that if you're keeping something in your life, there has to be a reason you want it there. The only question is why. Some people can't figure out why they can't seem to motivate themselves enough to create a new business to facilitate their goal of becoming significantly wealthier. Perhaps not realizing that they have a subconscious belief that to be rich is to be egocentric or disliked. Or perhaps they actually don't want to be super wealthy. Maybe it's a cover-up for wanting to feel secure and taken care of. Or their real desire is to be recognized for their art, and as this feels too unlikely to ever happen, they fall back on a secondary dream that doesn't actually motivate them. Some people say that they want to be successful at any cost, and yet don't want to log the hours of work it would take to get there. Perhaps it is because they don't understand at some level that being successful doesn't really make you happy nor liked. In fact, the opposite tends to be true. Success usually exposes you to jealousy and scrutiny. Successful people are not loved in the way that we imagine they would be. They are usually picked apart because envious people need to humanize them in some way. Perhaps instead of being successful, what many really want is just to be loved, and yet their ambition for success directly threatens that. Some people can't figure out why they keep choosing the wrong relationships, people whose patterns of rejection, abuse, or refusal to commit seem to be consistent. Perhaps they don't realize that they are actually recreating the relationship dynamics they experienced when they were young because they associate love with loss or abandonment. Perhaps they want to recreate family relationships in which they felt helpless, but to live them again as an adult where they can help the addict, the liar, or the broken person. When it comes to self-sabotaging behaviors, you have to understand that sometimes it's easy to get attached to having problems. Being successful can make you less liked. Finding love can make you more vulnerable. Making yourself less attractive can guard you. Playing small allows you to avoid scrutiny. Procrastinating puts you back in a place of comfort. All the ways in which you are self-sabotaging are actually ways that you are feeding a need you probably do not even realize you have. Overcoming it is not only a matter of learning to understand yourself better, but realizing that your problems are not problems, they are symptoms. You cannot get rid of the coping mechanisms and think you've solved the problem. There's the next chapter. What does self-sabotage look like? It's impossible to say decisively what self-sabotage does or doesn't look like, because certain habits and behaviors that can be healthy for one person can be unhealthy in another context. With that said, there are definitely some specific behaviors and patterns that are typically indicative of self-sabotage, and they usually relate to being aware that there's a problem in your life, yet feeling the need to perpetrate it regardless. Here are some of the main signs that you're probably in a cycle of self-sabotage. Number 1, resistance. Resistance is what happens when we have a new project that we need to work on and simply can't bring ourselves to do it. It's when we get into a great new relationship and then keep bailing on plans. It's when we get There's something in my throat. 1 second. It's when we get an amazing idea for our business and then feel tension and anger when it comes time to sit down and actually get to work. We often feel resistance in the face of what's going right in our lives, not what's going wrong. When we have a problem to solve, resistance is usually nowhere to be found. But when we have something to enjoy, create, or build, we are tapping into a part of ourselves that is trying to thrive instead of just survive, and the unfamiliarity can be daunting. So how to resolve this? How to resolve this? Resistance is your way of slowing down and making sure that it's safe to get attached to something new and important. In other cases, it can also be a warning sign that something isn't quite right, and you might need to step back and regroup. Resistance is not the same thing as procrastination or indifference and shouldn't be treated as such. When we are experiencing resistance, there's always a reason, and we have to pay attention. If we try to force ourselves to perform in the face of resistance, it usually intensifies the feeling, as we are strengthening the internal conflict and triggering the fear that's holding us back in the first place. Instead, releasing resistance requires us to refocus. We have to get clear on what we want as well as when and why we want it. I'll repeat that again, that was pretty good. We have to get clear on what we want as well as when and why we want it. We have to identify unconscious beliefs that are preventing us from showing up. And then we have to step back into the work when we feel inspired. Wanting is the entryway to showing up after resistance. Hitting your upper limit. That's the next thing. As discussed before, there is only a certain amount of happiness that most of us will allow ourselves to feel. His name is Gay Hendricks. Gay Hendricks calls this your upper limit. Your upper limit is essentially the amount of good that you're comfortable having in your life. It is your tolerance and threshold for having positive feelings or experiencing positive events. When you begin to surpass your upper limit, you start to unconsciously sabotage what's happening in order to bring yourself back to what's comfortable and familiar. For some people, this manifests physically, often as aches, pains, headaches, or physical tension. For others, it manifests emotionally as resistance, anger, guilt, or fear. It might seem totally counterintuitive, but we are not really wired to be happy. We are wired to be comfortable, and anything that is outside of that realm of comfort feels threatening or scary until we are familiar with it. So how to resolve this? Hitting your upper limit is really a great sign. It means that you are approaching and surpassing new levels of your life, and that is first and foremost something to congratulate yourself for. The way you resolve an upper limit problem is by slowly acclimating yourself to your new normal. Instead of shocking yourselves into big changes, allow yourself to slowly adjust and adapt. By taking it slow, you are allowing yourself to gradually reinstate a new comfort zone around what you want your life to be. Over time, you gradually shift your baseline to a new standard. I can attest to this because I feel like I'm a completely different type of person that I've for the past 5 years I've been trying to do and build better habits. One of them was just to wake up early and to have like a certain morning routine, and it has been great overall. I know I may be inconsistent at times, but because I do show up and get up and do the work in the morning, I feel a lot more productive, and I've changed over the years since I started creating this new habit of mine. And now that I have a dog and more responsibilities, I feel like this I've reached my upper limit that they're talking about here. And you know, I'm slowly acclimating myself to the new normal, and you know, just a new year, so I'm continuing to better myself. I'm gonna stop now and continue on to the next next chapter, or the next sign. So we got resistance as number 1, and hitting your upper limit as number 2, and the third one is uprooting. Uprooting happens when someone finds themselves jumping from relationship to relationship, or changing their business website again and again, when they really need to focus on confronting relationship issues when they arise, or taking care of clients they already have. In uprooting, you are not allowing yourself to blossom. You're only comfortable with this process of sprouting, which I do feel like that. I was contemplating on like creating a new YouTube channel just for the sake of like reading, and you know, I feel like the people who are subscribed to me in the channel are people I don't think I'm okay with. Like, I know them in a personal level, so I kind of just wanted to change that space, and to be able to create content that feels safe for me. I'm gonna continue now. It might be constantly needing a fresh start, which is often the result of not having healthy ways to deal with stress or struggling with conflict resolution. Uprooting can be a way of diverting attention from the actual problems in your life, as your attention must go toward re-establishing oneself at a new job or in a new town. Ultimately, uprooting means you are always just beginning your new chapter but never really finishing it. Despite your efforts to keep moving, you end up more stuck than ever. So how to resolve this? First, recognize the pattern. One of the primary symptoms of uprooting is not realizing that one is doing it. I kind of do. Therefore, the most important step is to become aware of what's happening. Trace back your steps over the past few years. How many places have you moved or worked? Then figure out what is driving you away from each new thing you find. Usually I find it's because of like the people I work with. Sometimes it doesn't really pan out the way I want, because I try to be friends and try to be social with people, and it doesn't really end up well. So I just feel embarrassed about myself, and I just kind of want to leave and start somewhere that I'm more accepted and more you know, like, what's the word, like, where I'm more enthusiastic to go into, because I don't want to go to work where I already feel stressed and uncomfortable and such and such, which is probably why I quit jobs and move away. So yeah, I got that down. I kind of am aware of the pattern. I know what's driving me away from each new thing. Next, you need to get clear on what you really want. Sometimes uprooting occurs because we step too quickly toward what we think we want, only to find that we didn't think it through and don't really want that thing very much. Clarity is key, because you're thinking long-term now. I don't have clarity. What would it look like to choose one place to live, then build connections there? My back's hurting. What would it look like to work at the same place and move up in your position or build your business? Remember that healing from an uprooting pattern is not about settling for something you don't want, nor is it about staying safe in an unsafe or unhealthy situation because you don't want to move again. It's about getting clear and determined on what's the right path for you, and then making a plan for how you can thrive, not just survive. When the moment comes that you would typically flee, confront the discomfort and stay where you are. Figure out why you are uncomfortable getting attached to one thing or another. Then determine what a healthy attachment would look like for you. that's something to think about. I don't know. I don't know what the healthy attachment looks like. Maybe the attachment that I have with my relationship now is that I am tolerating, or I tolerate the behaviors, or I find it's just, you know, acclimating myself to the new normal, that this is the kind of life I have now. It's not like I kind of know what a healthy attachment looks like, but at the same time I don't feel the stress coming home compared to before. So maybe that's one. I'm not quite sure. And yeah, the book was right. I don't have a lot of clarity about what's going on, so it's, I don't know how I'm gonna thrive with this. I don't have a lot of guidance when it comes to living my life, but at the same time I do know what I want to become, so I'm doing my best to gain the skills to get there. And you know, this is one of them: reading books, speaking more, and being able to be more confident in myself, and you know. Okay, continuing on. When we expect that our work must be perfect the first time we do it, we end up getting into a cycle of perfectionism. Perfectionism isn't actually wanting everything to be right. It's not a good thing. In fact, it's a hindering thing, because it sets up unrealistic expectations about what we are capable of or what the outcomes of our lives could be. Perfectionism holds us back from showing up and trying, or really doing the important work for our lives. This happens because when we are afraid of failing, or feeling vulnerable, or not being as good as we want others to think we are, we end up avoiding the work that is required to actually become that good. We sabotage ourselves because it is the willingness to show up and simply do it again and again and again that ultimately brings us to a place of mastery. How to resolve this? Don't worry about doing it well, just do it. Don't worry about writing a bestseller, just write. Don't worry about making a Grammy-winning hit, just make music. Don't worry about failing, just keep showing up and trying. At first, all that matters is that you do what you really want to do. From there, you can learn from your mistakes and over time, get to the place where you really want to be. The truth is that we actually do not accomplish great feats when we are anxious about whether or not what we do will indeed be something impressive and world-changing. We accomplish these sorts of things when we simply show up and allow ourselves to create something meaningful and important to us. Instead of perfection, focus on progress. I can attest to this. I do find that progress is key to becoming more consistent and more disciplined. And I've seen that in the things I've done in the past few years. You know, trying to have a goal in mind and being able to do it, and that goes to show how capable I am when it comes to competitions, group works, assignments, courses, certificates, and the like. That if you are just focused on like just completing the work, just doing the work, you'd be able to get where you are in the end. I'll continue on. Instead of having something done perfectly, focus on just getting it done. From there, you can edit, build, grow, and develop it to exactly what your vision is. But if you don't get started, you'll never arrive. So, next chapter, or next sign, limited emotional processing skills. Limited emotional processing skills. In life, there are going to be people, situations, and circumstances that are upsetting, infuriating, saddening, and even enraging. There will likewise be people, situations, and circumstances that are inspiring, hopeful, helpful, and truly offer purpose and meaning in your life. When you are able to process half of your emotions, you stunt yourself. You start going out of your way to avoid any possible situation that could bring up something frustrating or uncomfortable because you have no tools to be able to handle that feeling. This means that you start avoiding the very risks and actions that would ultimately change your life for the better. In addition, an inability to process your emotions means you get stuck with them. You sit and dwell on your anger and sadness because you don't know how to make them go away. When we can only process half of our emotions, we ultimately only live half of the life we really want to. How to resolve this? Healthy and emotional processing looks different for everyone, but generally involves these steps. 1. Get clear on what happened. Validate your feelings. Determine a course correction. Those are 3 things. Get clear on what happened. Validate your feelings. Determine a course correction. First, you need to understand why you're upset or the reason why something is bothering you so much. Without clarity on this, you'll continue to waste your time mulling over the details without really understanding what's hurting you so much. Next, you have to validate how you feel. Recognize that you are not alone. Anyone in your situation would probably feel similarly and does, and that what you feel is absolutely okay. In doing this, you can allow yourself a physical release such as crying, shaking, journaling about what you feel, or talking to a trusted friend. Once you are clear on what's wrong and have allowed yourself to fully express the extent of your emotions, you can determine how you will change your behavior or thought process so that you can get an outcome that you really want in the future. Next, justification. Your life is ultimately measured by your outcomes, not your intentions. It is not about what you wanted to do or would have done but didn't have the time. It's not about why you thought you couldn't. It's just whether or not you eventually did. When you're in a pattern of self-sabotaging behavior, you're often treating those excuses the same way you would treat measurable outcomes. You're using them to make yourself feel momentarily satisfied, using them as a replacement for the accomplishment itself. When we have a goal, dream, or plan, there is no measure of intent. It is only whether you did it or did not. Any other reason you offer for not showing up and doing the work is simply you stating that you prioritize that reason over your ultimate ambition, which means that it will always take precedence in your life. You may also be using excuses to help navigate away from your uncomfortable feelings that are ultimately necessary for your growth. How you resolve this? Start measuring your outcomes and focusing on at least doing one productive thing a day. It's no longer about how many days you really wanted to go to the gym. It's about how many days you did. It's no longer about wanting to show up for your friends. It's whether or not you did. It's no longer about the great ideas you had about how to change your business. It's about whether or not you did. Stop accepting your own excuses. Stop being complacent with your own justifications. Start quantifying your days by how many healthy, positive things you accomplished, and you will see how quickly you begin to make that progress. Next, disorganization. By leaving your lives and spaces in disarray, we are not just mindlessly forgetting to take care of our surroundings. We are often actually creating distractions and chaos that serve an unconscious purpose. A clean, organized space, both for work and for living, is essential to thriving. This means a tidy home, clothes that are easy to reach and put together each morning, a clean kitchen, and an organized desk. Paperwork should be filed. Paperwork should be filed in one space. Your bedroom should be calming, and everything should have a home. That it can return at the end of the day. And everything should have a home that it can return to at the end of the day. Without cleanliness, we create fewer opportunities for ourselves. Nothing positive nor beautiful flows from chaos. Deep down, we know this. Often, when we are self-sabotaging through this organization, it is because when we are very clean or organized, we get an uneasy feeling. That uneasy feeling is what we are trying to avoid. That uneasy feeling is what we are trying to avoid, because it is the recognition that now that everything is in order, we must get to work on doing what we need to do or who we want to become. When we leave our spaces messy, we are always a few tasks or priorities away from stepping out and showing up. How to resolve this? Like anything, you need to start slow and adjust yourself over time. To declutter and reorganize, start with one room. And if that's too much, try one corner, one drawer, or closet. Work on that and only that. And then implement a routine that maintains the organization. From there, start arranging your space so that it works for you, not against you. Put something soothing on your bedside table like a diffuser, or create an organized family calendar in the kitchen so appointments and schedules are visible to others. If you have trouble with the mail being disorganized, create a spot for it to go when it comes in each day. If you have trouble with laundry being disorganized, create a system for it and decide on a day or two that you do the wash and do it in bulk. You must slowly let yourself get used to working at a clean desk, and eventually it will become second nature. You'll begin to realize that you also feel so much stressed and so much less stressed and much more in control of your life. It is very hard to show up as the person you want to be when you are surrounded by an environment that makes you feel like a person you aren't. There's still so much to go through, and I have 3 minutes left. This is the same thing. It doesn't stop. Oh, it stops at page 70. It stops at page 69 or 70, and I have 3 minutes left, and I'm at page 42. But I think I can read for 3 more minutes. The last one for this video is attachment to what you don't really want. Sometimes your dreams for your life are adopted from other people's preferences. In other cases, you determine what you want and then you outgrow your old ambitions. Excuse me. Sometimes we fight endlessly to try to force ourselves to want something that we do not really want, and it always leaves us empty because it isn't a genuine desire. I feel that with my job in the interviews that I'm applying for. This is different than lacking motivation or experiencing resistance. Our inability to perform is not based in fear or lack of skill. It is based in an inherent knowing that this is not what we want for our lives. And perhaps we're feeling lost or unable to change our path. When you find yourself struggling with something, you have to ask yourself, do I actually want to do this? Do you want the job, or do you just like how the title sounds? Are you in love with the person, or do you like the idea of the relationship? Are you still holding an outdated idea of what your greatest success will be? And if so, what would it look like to let that go? At the end of the day, self-sabotage sometimes functions to show us that we aren't quite on the right path yet, and that we need to reevaluate to determine what would feel best for our lives, even if that means we disappoint some people or even our younger selves. We do not have to live the rest of our lives trying to achieve some measure of success we thought was ideal when we were too young to understand who we even were. Our only responsibility is to make decisions for the person we have become. How to resolve this? Be willing to accept that maybe your success story doesn't look the way that you once thought it might. Maybe the kind of success you're really hungry for is to feel at peace each day, or making your life about travel instead of work. Maybe it's about having thriving friendships or a happy relationship. Maybe the business you got into excuse me. Maybe the business you got into 10 years ago isn't the business you want to be in forever. Maybe the work you thought you'd love isn't coming as naturally to you as you'd hope. When we let go of what isn't right for us, we create space to discover what is. However, doing so requires the tremendous courage to put our pride aside and see things for their way, and see things for what they really are. Yeah. And that's it. That's 30 minutes. That was good. See you in the next one. Let's continue on.